Hi, welcome to another TeamSense Tuesday webinar. My name is Caroline Rizzo, and today I have the awesome opportunity to pick the brain of our special guest today, Kelly O'Brien. Before I introduce her and we get to talking, let's cover a few housekeeping items. So as always, questions are encouraged throughout the webinar. We ask that you place them in the Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to them at the last section of our time together. You may have noticed we are recording the webinar. It will be emailed to all of our registrants via a YouTube link in case you have to hop early or you'd like to revisit the content at a later time. You can always visit teamsense.com/webinars to see all past and upcoming topics. So without further ado, let's introduce ourselves. So as I mentioned, my name is Caroline Rizzo. I am from Austin, Texas, and I am part of the marketing team at TeamSense and producer of our webinars. My goal is to learn about topics related to HR and operations as a way to start conversations and learn from experts in the field. Which brings me to welcoming the lovely Kelly O'Brien from Bluebird. Kelly, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, and let's use that word expert loosely. Hi, I'm Kelly O'Brien, and I'm actually from and still in Rhode Island. I'm here at Bluebird, just about to celebrate 2 years in November. I'm the HRIS compliance and I don't even know. Compliance HRIS and I don't remember auditing. So I've been here 2 years and loving this job and love working with TeamSense.
That's awesome. Well, we love working with you. You are so much fun to work with. I know all the team has really enjoyed their time with you, and I have been dying to get you on a webinar because you are one of our top fans. You come every week, so thank you for that. But now it's finally your turn. We're going to tell your story. So I'm going to obviously stop sharing. We're just going to jump right into it. So tell us about Bluebird. Bluebird has such an interesting history. I'd love to get a little bit more of a sense for what the company does, how many employees you have. Just give us a little bit of an overview there.
Sure. So Bluebird actually came about back in 1927 when Al Lucy was asked to help a gentleman who owned a business get his employees to work
Yeah.
because they didn't have vehicles. So he went home and he took a Ford chassis, a Ford pickup truck chassis, and built a wooden bus on top of that chassis. And that is how we started to come about. We have just shy of 2,000 employees with facilities in Georgia and a warehouse in Ohio. So I am working remotely here. Um, and it's just a great place. We make your Bluebird school buses. Our priority is keeping your children safe.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I think everybody that has, hopefully, I would think, but I have ridden in a million Bluebird school buses. That is the quintessential school bus that you see, you've ridden in as a kid. No joke, when we were preparing for our webinar, I hopped off and minutes later I look outside the window right there. Bluebird bus dropping my neighbor's kids off. So that was such a cool moment just to be able to see it in the wild. But I'd love to learn more too about your role and your specific tenure. I mean, you talked a little bit about how you've been there for 2 years and where you're based. What is it about your role that you love? And just give us a little bit more sense of your day to day.
So I've always had that crazy analytical mind. So I enjoyed that, but coming involved in HR totally opens up that role because you work so closely with HR and of course work with operations team, which is how we found TeamSense. So when I first joined Bluebird, one of the first things I was tasked with was trying to help the company find a way to better track attendance. So at that time, so one of our facilities, our largest facility, every day they have about 14 to 1,500 people clocking in anywhere from 5 to 7 in the morning. And how are they reporting their absences was, calling the security guard at the shack, texting, calling their supervisors, answer machine. It was just a crazy free for all.
Yeah.
So no word of a lie, I found TeamSense online. I got a demo and I was sold within seconds. Simply because, I mean, working 30 years in this area, texting is critical to production people because they don't have computers. So TeamSense has answered our solution for attendance and many other things in the meantime. So just been great.
That's awesome. So one thing that you talked a lot about too when you were kind of evaluating TeamSense is the fact that you work a lot with supervisor operations, right? And having that partnership between your team and operations team is so important. So how has been kind of how has the support for supervisors changed with TeamSense? I know you mentioned time cards in particular. What does that look like?
So on top of TeamSense, so the employees text that they're going to be out, that immediately goes to our supervisors' phones. However, every 10 minutes, our time and attendance system, the employees' time cards are updated from a file feed from TeamSense, which is giving our operations team basically live data. So
Yeah.
especially at startup, they can immediately clock in, run a report, and see who's going to be out and immediately know where to reassign people as needed or call in if necessary.
Yeah, because I can imagine that shift start would be such a nightmare if you realize all of a sudden, oh my God, we have 10 people out today and we have no idea that they were even not going to be here until we're showing up, we're having our pre-shift meeting and the bodies aren't here. And so how, in terms of what was done before, in terms of actually updating the time cards, was that like a manual process? What did that look like?
It was, so the supervisors would get the text message, the phone call, the message from the shed, and have to update the time cards. And the issue is 1,500 people all coming in at the same time with a startup meeting in minutes. So
Yeah.
they knew they didn't have enough time to get the time cards updated to pull the report and know where they stood. It was all word of mouth. So they were kind of reaching out to each supervisor, how many are you missing? And it was all done verbally. So it made it very difficult for leadership to make the right decisions to make sure the day was going to happen. With TeamSense, it's instantaneous. Even though the supervisors are still getting notified, now they can see it live every 10 minutes, and it's been a game changer. Even for, we had a lot of people who didn't call, not that they, AWOL as we call them, no show, no call. But TeamSense has lessened that because now it's so easy for the employees and it's holding the employees accountable for their own actions because we can immediately say, even if they try, and they have, they'll try to say we contacted TeamSense and I can instantly know, yes, that's true or not. And
Yeah.
if I visually see it, I can even reach out to your support team and they can tell me, oh, they did call, but they didn't fill out the form. Or they did call, but they hung up before they gave all the information. So it's fantastic. So we can hold them accountable, and they are. They're using the tool, and it's made life better for the operations team.
That's awesome. Well, it's so great that you have such a good partnership with your ops team. I'm sure they appreciate it because it really takes so much of that burden and the time suck of just having to constantly manually update these time cards. Like, oh, that's like the last thing that I would want to be focused on. So I can totally imagine. And I appreciate the piece around the accountability. Do you feel like in terms of making it easier for employees to call off, do you feel like that's actually helped with your absenteeism rates at all?
It has because now we can prove.
Yeah.
So, and we have an attendance policy, which when they're AWOL, that's a quick 4 points.
Yeah.
By them having to report it, they can't say I did, and we have to give them the benefit of the doubt. Now there's no doubt in our minds. We know they did or did not take the necessary action. So it's holding the employee accountable to keep track of their points as well and know that they need to show up to work. So it's helped a lot.
Yeah, that's great. And you have the right paper trail there to ensure like, hey, we see this. And so there's not a awkward discussion around pointing fingers of who's right and who's wrong. So I can really appreciate that too. Um,
One other good thing is
yeah,
that's big for the plant floor. They are a burner crew. So they're constantly changing their phone numbers, and TeamSense makes that easier. When they text in, if they don't recognize the phone number, they ask them for their employee ID, and it immediately finds them, saves that phone number, and keeps the tracking easy. So
yeah, that's exactly it. I think that's the part of the texting that makes a difference. Let's say that we came to you and said, hey, can you download this app? How do you think that your team would, how would they receive that in terms of needing an
so
app?
having recently lived that with one of our vendors. They had an issue with their app and we had to have everybody reinstall the app on their phone. And let me tell you, it was very long, 2 weeks of
Oh,
getting everybody set up correctly because there's more than one app for this vendor.
mhm.
So, even though you give them pictures and say, make sure the app looks like this, there's still issues. It ends up a lot of hand holding for supervisors, HR, and they even find me up here in Rhode Island. So yeah, not having an app is a huge help to us.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, for me, I consider myself to be relatively tech savvy. And there was something where I had to purchase concert tickets, and then the email instructions was like, go and download this app. I'm like, oh no, not another one, and it's just so painful. And so the fact that you can just meet people where they're at with the text makes it so much easier. So I'm glad that that's been really impactful for you. So I want to talk a little bit about the actual implementation of TeamSense. Is this something that you oversaw yourself? What was that like, and how was the experience for your employees?
I did, and it was great. It took longer than we expected, but no fault of ours or TeamSense. It had to do with our vendor, because they were backed up. But it was honestly, in my 40 years of work, the easiest tool ever to implement. It was crazy. The support team was amazing. They provided us with screenshots and the necessary information to have our communications and training set up. And literally on go live day, I logged in probably about 3 in the morning because the shift started at 5, and I couldn't believe how many employees so quickly were using it correctly on day one.
That's
It was,
awesome. That's what we love to hear.
and it's so instantaneous. Had to set up a file feed so that TeamSense had our people, literally easy peasy. And yeah, like you said earlier, probably your biggest fan.
We love to hear it. So give me a little sense for what made it easy. I think this is just for tips and tricks for people that are maybe new to TeamSense. It sounds like y'all also did a pilot group, right? Was that a really nice way to test it?
We did. So what we did, there's the four main facilities. One is the biggest, so we saved that for last. So
Okay.
we used two of the smaller facilities to do a pilot group to work through anything that might go wrong because things inevitably can go wrong. But even there were, I think, 3 hiccups in total the first 2 weeks. And I immediately emailed your development team and it was fixed within an hour at the most, everything. So it was great that we had the pilot group as well, though, because we did get to learn where the employees struggled,
Okay.
even though it was so minimal. It mostly was the fact that they had to approach you once they knew to text the word attendance.
Yeah.
Apps, it was great. They get the form and they're good to go. So
Yeah.
I think they didn't believe it could be so easy.
I love that. So I'm so curious in terms of just initial feedback. Do you have kind of a diverse set of people? Like some people are really tech savvy, some are not. We do hear people that are like, oh, you're never going to get me to text. I just want to keep calling off. It's a habit. How was the feedback? Like, how do you feel like they really took the change?
So the plant floor was very good. They're totally tech savvy. They are all about texting.
Okay.
But supervisors and operations leadership has access to your portal. And even so some of them are not quick, they're not good with change. Of course, they deal with it on a daily basis on the plant floor. But when it comes to tools, I think they get a little hesitant.
Yeah.
And they even were amazed that all they had to do was log into your portal. They can look at their team and know they can look at one specific department. They can look at one site versus another. It was just so simple and it's button clicks away from them.
Yeah, I love that. That change is hard no matter what for anybody. And so I think once they start understanding the benefit and the time save, it really makes a bigger impact for them. So I want to talk a little bit about the no call, no shows. That is a little bit of a stress point for people in HR specifically. Do you happen to have like a number around no call, no show reduction at the top of your head?
Yeah, our AWOL count, honest to God, it cut almost completely in half, if not 60%. And it was, I think it's the accountability because they couldn't, and they did, they tried, but it was the first few weeks, each group, so the pilot group and then the initial, when they tried to say, we called and it didn't acknowledge it, and we got to prove to them on paper, yeah, you called them, but you never finished it. You text TeamSense, but you didn't complete the form. They had nothing, not a leg to stand on.
Yeah.
So they will then know, oh, I have to stop paying attention. They're really watching me and can now prove it.
Yeah.
So change that culture pretty quickly. And it also holds the supervisors accountable too, because before the supervisors were having to say, I don't remember if they text me. They don't have names on the cell phone for these 1,500 employees who are randomly texting them to. So even to figure out who from the 1,500 is texting me. Now it comes in and it clearly shows the name. But the AWOL people, it's just, and it's not gonna change the person who's gonna get let go for absenteeism anyway. It's not gonna
Yeah.
change
Yeah.
nature. But it did change the nature that it's so easy to report the absence. We're all watching them to make sure they do it. So they're actually doing it and sticking to it. It's crazy, just, and it makes that startup so much easier to
Yeah.
know, oh, look, we have 47 people out today. How are we gonna adjust accordingly? And it's just made it so much easier.
That's fabulous. Well, and I like the piece too you mentioned around the culture shift. I think that's an important thing to note too, because you can kind of go into an organization where it's easy for me just to kind of no call, no show, and I can kind of get away with it. But really having the accountability there retains talent too in a lot of ways as well, because they feel empowered to make those decisions for themselves. It's easier to do it. Do you feel like that making it easier for them has actually made them happier in general?
Well, I don't know necessarily happen that,
Okay.
but they are definitely, I think, and we did, so me coming in to do this analytic work is really helped the operations team because, for instance, we have other policies. They must work the day before or after the holiday. They have to, if they're greater than an hour or less than an hour late, the points fluctuate. TeamSense just takes it and makes my auditing so easy. Where those other policies, I have to kind of manipulate the data, run different reports. TeamSense, it's easy peasy for me to run and say, no, here are your point infractions right here.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, we've talked with some HR managers too, where one in particular was like, I have to go to the payroll team and I have to get their points. And then I have to then get, like, if anybody wants to know what their point standing is, you have to go through all these hoops and people, and it's such a time suck. And so, really being able to see that data right then and there in the dashboard just makes it so much more simpler. And again, I'm glad that it helps you with your auditing purposes since you're obviously a lot of your job is in the analytics section. So, that's great.
And soon you're gonna be helping me out too, because we're gonna go live with our attendance points. And we're also gonna have our violation notices text to the employees, which
Yep.
saves so much more time. For when they do have infractions, we're gonna be able to send them the notification on their phone, and we're gonna have a report to show that history. So it's just TeamSense is helping us in ways we never thought, beyond absences.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. Well, yeah, you did tease around the notifications part, which is super fun. I'm excited we'll talk more about that too. But yeah, the points notifications is really a game changer and really just enhancing that accountability culture. So that's fantastic. So I want to think about we talked a little bit some of your kind of employee engagement initiatives. How has Team since supported some of those initiatives for you?
So we've been doing policy acknowledgements, which was a struggle because on the plant floor, it was paper. So you had to get the paper in the employee's hand, have them sign it, file it, make sure you documented that they gave it, put it in their file so we could keep track of it for compliance purposes. Now we're using TeamSense. They can see their policies and then they answer a quick survey confirming that they read each one, send it, it's in report format for us. We actually just did this year's a week ago, and we're more than halfway there, which if anybody works on a plant floor, getting acknowledgement of policies is not an easy task. And this has just made it so much easier. I'm able to quickly every day give the operation see, here's an update here, who has done it, and here who has not. So they can go right to the person and say, hey,
Yeah.
here, and then it's been great. We also use it to report anytime a line may have to close, a department may need to close, or a plant.
Right.
So it's a great instant communication tool. We've even used it when payrolls needed somebody because we do have shifts all night, weekends. So at any given moment, somebody may not be working, but payroll has to run and we want to pay them correctly. We
Yeah.
can reach out with TeamSense, send them a message asking them to call me, and I can quickly jump on a phone with them, have the conversation so payroll can move on. So that instantaneous, even when they're not on site, is a great help. We're gonna be posting our employee handbook out there so they have quick, easy access to it without going to one of our kiosks. So again, there's just, we did a focus group, so we used, I forget what vendor they used to announce the focus groups to everybody, for everybody to sign up. And the acceptance of that for our employee was not good. We weren't getting the responses we accepted. So
Yeah.
I think, should we try TeamSense? Let's, do something crazy. We sent that out and we got more than we needed for the focus group. So it was amazing, like instantly. And which is great because we want them to understand they do have a say here at Bluebird and that we want to hear from them. So it's been great. It's our first focus groups and TeamSense saved us to make them successful. So that was fantastic.
That's fantastic. So it sounds like you're definitely utilizing the communication tool, the communicate tool, and then we use forms as well for surveying, which is really helpful. So it sounds to me like you mentioned you're having way better response rates. People are actually engaging with it. And probably in return, like you said, you want them to feel like they too have a voice. They're part of the Bluebird culture. It seems a lot like we spend a lot of time focusing on the desk workers and their feedback, but what about the hourly worker? When can we get their feedback and how can we get it efficiently? So I'm glad to hear that that's solved it. Do y'all typically survey your employees often for feedback at all or anything around engagement?
So we are starting to, we did do a survey, a quick short survey on TeamSense as a test. And we are working on building a new survey. So it's the ease that TeamSense and even like the policy acknowledgements, I'm pushing you outside your wheelhouse. But you all quickly said, yes, we can, let's figure this out and had it. Like within a week, you came back with a solution for me. So we love the fact that we have a partnership and you're part of the Bluebird team, which that's one of my favorite things about Bluebird. Working here, everybody respects each other and everybody, we're one big team.
Yeah.
It's not just, the HR team I'm on, everybody jumps in and helps everybody, which, when you reach my age, respect and everybody helping each other out is just the best thing to do after, past experiences where you didn't get that.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, that I think just again having the data at your fingertips makes a big deal, but then also having the ability to send out messages so easily makes it a great. It just helps with the efficiency of communicating, but then also we've talked in the past about any sort of plant closures, emergencies. Been thinking about your team in Georgia with this hurricane recently that happened. I know we had talked before the hurricane was kind of approaching and there was some concern about shutting down the plant overnight. How did you end up having to send those communications or
so we ended up not having to simply
good?
because the storm moved towards the end of the day, Thursday, right? It hit Friday.
Yeah,
So it moved. So they ended up closing down.
yeah,
But the great thing was, especially with me here remote in Rhode Island, they did have a lot of power outages. So a lot of people with laptops, had we not made the decision for our employee safety in advance,
yeah,
I was to send that message out on their behalf because the operations people did lose power. So even having that access for me, HR, there's always enough people who can help and jump in. So we didn't need to use it for the hurricane, thankfully.
glad.
And they did have lots of wind and water, but they didn't get the brunt of it.
That's good. We're so glad that they're safe. That's always just really scary. I think a lot about other plants or locations that have been in zones where there's been tornadoes and hurricanes, and we know of teams that have been working really hard to make sure they have those communications planned, ready to go in case an emergency strikes and they're ready to support the team. So it's good that they have you. Even though you're remote, you can still send those communications out, which is fantastic.
Right, right.
I love it. Well, that's fantastic. So, kind of just speaking to some operational efficiency here. I know we talked a lot about no calls, no shows, kind of all of that. You talked a lot about policy acknowledgement and kind of plant closures. Is there anything else notable that you've gotten feedback from supervisors or anyone from your ops team or data that you now have that you didn't have before?
So yeah, the operations team, of course, is always looking to see what might be happening consistently. So one of the things I noticed pretty immediately was as soon as football season stopped, our Monday call offs increased quite a bit, not count Super Bowls off the chart, but I think you guys recently posted that. It's very true. It was amazing. So we do know Mondays, and I think our other day is Wednesday, oddly, but we were able to pinpoint that. And they actually called in some extra people, like just in case, or put them on alert and they can text them and
Yeah,
say, I need you to come in, which is again another great tool because
yeah.
they all get their text messages. We've also used it. I'm trying to think because we use it for so much. Oh goodness gracious, I'm trying to think of when ops leaders call me. Um, Track and time. It's just having that TeamSense file first, trying to extract information from a time and attendance system. It's not necessarily the easiest because there's so many factors playing in. You
Mhm.
have work hours, non-work hours. So often when you run a report, it's not one. To analyze the data correctly, you're running 4 or 5 reports. Now with TeamSense, I get to run TeamSense report and just pull it into our master listing. And I'm able to quickly do it without pulling it from the time and attendance system. So the immediate assistance it's provided is great. I know that my calls for issues. So I am that point of contact if something's going wrong. And often word of mouth on the plant floor tends to travel really fast. So if one employee says something within minutes, 30 people, it's now a fact.
Oh gosh.
So on that fact, you have to, I'm that person that has to go, hold on,
Yeah.
let's get to the root of this. And with TeamSense, I'm able to get to the root. I can usually even pinpoint what employee started the rumor almost, but so it's great. It's just so easy to log in. You can look at their records in TeamSense. You can see their history. You can pull that history to know instead of using the time system, because the
Mhm.
time system, you can only look at a week, maybe 2 weeks at a time. With TeamSense, I could run a report from, January 1st to December 31st, and in minutes, I have all that information. So
That's
instead of running 52 reports, I can run one TeamSense report. Yeah,
Yeah, which makes a huge difference in terms of saving your time and then also just making the data way more clean and digestible. That is interesting that you made a point kind of around the ops team. I like the fact that you're able to utilize data to then make proactive decisions, even seasonally.
correct.
Um, and that reduces a lot of headaches. It sounds like you'll have a lot of Georgia Bulldogs or Atlanta Falcons fans that are like, kidding.
I try not to ask so I don't get harassed being an England person.
Oh no, she's a Patriots person. I'm kidding.
I am not.
Oh,
You can't
okay.
vote against me, Red Sox fan.
Okay.
Rest in
You're baseball. That's great.
peace. I'm
Obviously.
a person, but not Patriot.
Okay. Good.
Don't get me in trouble. There are lots of people listen.
It's all good. I won't get you in trouble. Wow, okay. So the other question I had too, it sounds like you touched on the fact that allowing your employees to self-serve to get policies. Are you utilizing forms or sorry, portal and TeamSense to be able to do that where you can upload documents?
So I'm just getting there. So the
Love it.
last test where the policy acknowledgement, that went so well, we're going to post the handbook. So we just had our first full handbook made. So we're anxious to get it into the employees' hands, and we're gonna get to use TeamSense so that they can instantly, whenever they want to look at a policy, they can text the word policy to TeamSense and presto. They'll have that handbook. They can look for exactly what they want and see if they're right or wrong immediately,
Yeah.
which is gonna stop a lot of questions, you know. If you go to our Fort Valley plant, the HR team sits in an open environment. So they're like 9 desks, three. If you walk in there, every single one of the HR team at any given moment has at least one, if not three employees in front of their desks. And they're so often policy related. So
Yeah.
just them, without them having a computer, we have it on our intranet, but they don't have computers. They have to all share the, handful of kiosks. So now they're gonna be able to just go look right online and not have to go to HR and say, what is the attendance policy? How many points does it take for me to get fired? They're gonna be able to text the word points to TeamSense. They're gonna know right where they stand
Yeah.
and if they're in danger.
It's well, yeah, I mean, I do think that there is that nice piece of accountability. They can make that decision, but then also it's like, uh-oh, okay, I'm starting to really hit too high of points here.
And
That trip
even
I wanted to go to, maybe not gonna happen.
right, just knowing their point balances is gonna, the supervisors are constantly getting asked, which disrupts. They want to help the employee. They'll have to go over to their desk instead of be on the floor, pull up the employee to say, you have 4 points, you have 2 points, whatever it might be, and they're not gonna have to do that anymore. It's all gonna be quick at their fingertips,
Oh,
which the supervisors are very excited about the attendance policy, and they can't believe it's gonna be this easy. So they used to do paper when we first got here. We did make forms that they now use the last year in Excel, which has helped them. But TeamSense is going to make it a game changer because they're not going to have to do anything but make sure the employees' time cards are accurate for points.
yeah, that's fantastic. Well, there's nothing worse than maybe you're sick, you're really feeling terrible, or even, during COVID time, if you felt terrible and ill and you had to kind of try to figure out what's the attendant, like what's going on, what's the policy, that person can then be self-serving and they don't feel like they have to pick up a phone and call somebody when they're feeling really sick. Or if they had like an emergency or a death in the family, it's like the last thing that I'd want to do is have to pick up my phone and talk to the security shack and tell them, hey,
Yeah,
my grandfather passed away or something, that happened. Instead, it's just you can make it impersonal, you can send a text, done. It's finished. And at the end of the day, it doesn't allow the supervisors to have to lift their fingers either.
right, exactly.
Yeah, makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we're rounding out on our time. I want to make sure we have time for some Q&A. I feel like Kelly and I could talk for hours. We almost feel
Not
like
me.
we're a
It's okay.
webinar. Um, but obviously we will shift over to Q&A. But before we do that, I would love to talk a little bit more about TeamSense in case Kelly's story resonated with you. You want to learn more about TeamSense, see how it works. Always recommend scheduling a demo, 30-minute demo, quick and easy. You can see how the product works in real life, and you'll get to meet someone cool from our team too. Also, if you want to see other stories like Kelly's that we have, our case studies are a really great place to start. Some really great testimonials similar to Kelly's throughout all the different customers that we showcase. And then, of course, selfishly, plug for me. I host these webinars on a bi-weekly schedule. We'd love for you to join our next webinar where we feature really cool customers. So without further ado, let's hop into some Q&A. I had a couple of questions that actually did come in, so wanted to throw these at you real quick, and if I can
Yeah,
also help answer too. This one that came in, can you use TeamSense to communicate in languages other than English? I guess I can help answer that, and maybe I'll give you some spice here. So the answer is yes, you can communicate in over 20 languages, I think even more now. We obviously work with customers throughout the US, but of course we have non-native English speakers, and so being able to text in Spanish, you can do that. They can text in their native language. Out of curiosity, Kelly, do y'all have people within your plants that do not speak English that you need to communicate with?
we do.
Yeah,
Um, and they do. It's great because even the absence form, all they do is pick the language they want and it's gonna present it in their language. So yes, we have utilized that as well.
yeah,
It's a great feature because it makes them feel part of the team, where sometimes, not knowing the English language, it can be a barrier, and it's not a fair barrier. some of our best employees, right, could just not understand. But to be able to just flip that into Spanish or Laotian, it's great. Great.
Yeah, that's fantastic. How many languages do y'all typically Spanish, and then you mentioned one other?
I think the other one, I'm saying Laotian and it's not, and I'm gonna draw a blank because you're putting all this pressure on me, Caroline.
That's okay. I'm gonna start speaking in Spanish, Kelly. I'm kidding. No, yeah, that we have a whole list of languages that we can share too. And obviously happy to share that with anybody after the webinar if you have questions. But yeah, I think that's just like such a great feature of it. And it really allows for more inclusivity, like you mentioned. It's like making them feel part of the culture because you can still have the best employees. We don't want to diminish anything that they're doing because they can't speak in English or the language of choice in your company. So that's fantastic. Okay, last question. This is kind of an interesting one here. When talking about TeamSense with your leadership team, what kind of information did you bring to them to get approval? So what was kind of like the process in terms of getting you were like, oh, I saw the demo of TeamSense. I love it. This is fantastic. But then was it just like an overnight switch? You made the decision, or how did that approach work?
It was an easy sell to the operation. And the reason it was an easy sell was I set them up like an employee and said, go ahead, type the word absence. And they were blown away. They were like, what? I'm like, that's all your employees have to do. They have to know to send the word absence. They can spell it wrong. It still works. You send that word. If it doesn't recognize your phone number, it asks for your ID. You all shared what we made. They're like business cards that
Yeah.
each wallet, we put their name and IDs on it in case they don't remember their employee ID. Easy peasy. So I made the operation leaders do it, and they were sold immediately as well. Never mind, once I showed them, I had the TeamSense dashboard open while they all did it live. And then I said, okay, now watch. I'm going to pull everything you just did, pull the report up in front of them, and it showed what they each selected for why they were going to be out or late. And they were like, okay, this is easy. I was like, so it really became a no-brainer for all of us. And then when we got to have it flow immediately over to the employee's time cards, that was the final deal. So it
Oh,
is, it's great.
that's
Great.
fantastic. Well, it's fun to see you. Obviously, you started off with the attendance piece, and that was great. And now you're kind of evolving into the product. You're using the communication tooling, you're using Portal, and hey, you're the early user of the points notification product feature too, which we're starting to kind of share more about. But you really are the TeamSense superhero, the whole package right here. It's awesome.
I don't know about that, but all right.
Yeah, I love it. It's fantastic. Well, hey, we are at time. Oh my gosh. I just cannot thank you enough, Kelly, for finally joining our webinar. Got you on here. So glad to hear your story. And we learned so much. And Bluebird is just such a cool company. I've really enjoyed learning more about it, especially since I feel like I see their buses every single day. You don't really think twice, but I'm like, wow, that's so cool that, you're part of the company that is the school bus that I grew up riding in.
Yes, it is. It is. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was such a pleasure. And hopefully we'll have you on here again soon. Maybe one day we can do a nice HR roundtable, bring you in, meet some other cool people too. So teaser there. Okay, well, Kelly, we're at time. Thank you so much again for joining us. To everybody else that joined us today, thank you so much for your time too. We'll email out the recording and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks all. Thanks, Caroline.
Thanks, Kelly. Take care. Bye.